President Trump regularly expresses pique about kissing and counting books written by former advisors and advisors. But he had no problems with Let Me Finish by Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey and former director of transition. Well, honestly, Trump said in an interview at this week's Oval Room, he was very kind to me. But it was not good for his family, he was pointed out, most notably Jared Kushner, his son-in-law and senior counselor, who was eviscerated in the book. No, admitted Trump, but he was incredibly gentle with me. In fact, an 85-minute interview with the president offers many clues to the Trumpologist who seek to understand him and the ways of his Byzantine court, who is standing and who is below, what he likes and what he does not like, what he does, and what not. Intentionally or by chance, Mr. Trump sends signals that are then analyzed and even satirized. Kushner was not the only person in the president's orbit to find the bottom of the bus during his session with the New York Times on Thursday. Mr. Trump rebuked the assistants for not having linked him to author Bob Woodward before his own book was published. He said his lawyer, Rudolph W. Giuliani, was wrong with the Trump project in Moscow and wrong in other matters. He went after former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, rewriting the story of the separation. While Mattis resigned in protest at the president's decision to leave Syria, Trump insisted that he expelled the secretary. "I was not happy with the work I was doing at all," he said. "And I said, it's on the hour." That's why in the letter he wrote, "You have to have your own choice." The reason he said was because I said, "You're not my choice." Actually, Mr. Mattis appeared in the White House with his letter of resignation already written in. Initially, Trump accepted it and characterized it as a retirement with distinction, but was offended after seeing stories that characterized the letter as a rebuke and forced Mr. Mattis to leave 2 months earlier than originally planned. On the other hand, Trump made a sign of forgiveness to Stephen K. Bannon, his former strategist, who was excommunicated from the Trump camp after talking with another author about a book that attacked the president. "If you've seen him in an interview in the last 6 months, I think nobody talks better about him," Trump said, adding that the two did not speak for more than a year. Also on the positive side of Trump's book was William P. Barr, his attorney general. Although the president was dissatisfied when Mr. Barr, in his confirmation hearing, described a close relationship with Robert S. Mueller III, the special counselor, Trump said that the testimony was totally acceptable to me and that Mr. Barr, maybe I'm a big attorney general. Perhaps the most notoriously left out of the president's box were the nation's intelligence chiefs, whom he described just a day earlier as extremely passive and naive people who should go back to school. According to him, everything was fine because they had assured him that his report to Congress this week, in conflict with his foreign policy, had been misinterpreted by the media. The media, of course, remained permanently in the presidential doghouse, although Trump enjoys talking to reporters and attacking them in almost equal proportions. On Thursday, he gave the reporters 3 times as much time as planned, confronting all the questions, without haste, and asked him to call him personally if he had questions. "I came from Jamaica, Queens, Jamaica Estates, and I became President of the United States," he said, pleading with A.G. Sulzberger, editor of The Times, for better coverage. "I have the right to have a great story about me, just one, of my newspaper." But Trump's description of his meeting with the intelligence chiefs highlighted how the president forms what his former director of communications, Anthony Scaramucci, himself an author of Everything, once called a distortion of Trump's reality field, where he curves made for himself. U.S. President George W. Bush announced today that U.S. President George W. Bush is not willing to abandon his nuclear weapons, in disagreement with the president's approach. At their meeting on Thursday, Trump said he challenged them about that disconnection. One of the things they said very strongly, according to, was that Iran is essentially a wonderful place, the president said. "And I said, it's not a wonderful place, it's a bad place, and they're doing bad things." And they said, "We agree." I said, "What do you mean by agreement? You cannot agree." And they said the testimony was totally uncharacterized. But it may be that Mr. Trump was the one who decharacterized or at least misunderstood. The intelligence chiefs never said that Iran was a wonderful place or something similar. They simply said that there was no evidence of a nuclear program violating the agreement he made to desist. Mr. Trump actually wrote a straw man exaggerating his testimony, and they could honestly shoot him down without resuming what they actually said. If so, it worked. Trump was happy enough to blame the disparity in the media through Twitter, tweets that were actually sent while he was talking to his visitors from the Times. He had an assistant looking for impressions of the tweets to pass. When it was noticed that he was in the room with them when the tweets were placed on his account, he acknowledged, "Well, sometimes I said tweets in interviews. Mr. Trump can be like an unguided missile. It is never totally clear where the conversation is going to give." In defending his approach to the presidency, he summoned the spirits of George Washington, who said he also maintained a business while in office, and John F. Kennedy, who appointed his brother as Attorney General. Mr. Trump does not obsess with precision. He suggested that it was excessive for FBI to implant a 29-person team with AK-27, or what they were using to arrest their longtime associate, Roger J. Stone Jr. There is no AK-27 rifle. Presumably, the self-described Second Amendment champion was confusing him with the AK-47, although the FBI. Of course he does not use weapons made in Russia. Fixing it can be a challenge. Mr. Trump was asked if he was the person in Stone's indictment who led a campaign officer to contact Mr. Stone about the damaging information in the possession of WikiLeaks, which was releasing Democratic emails stolen by Russian agents. "I have not seen him," he said of the accusation, but then he suggested that he was well informed about what was in the document. "I know what was in the accusation. If you read, there was no collusion with Russia." In the same way, referring to Rod J. Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, he first said, "Rod told me that I am not the target of the investigation." But then he suggested that the guarantee was given to his lawyers. The lawyers would talk a lot about that, he said. And he said that initially he did not know about a memorandum that Barr wrote as a private lawyer, criticizing one of Mueller's lines of research, only learning about it later. "I mean, I read later," he said. Then he said, "I did not see the memorandum, I never read the memorandum." Truth be told, he did not read Mr. Christie's book either. Excuse me, Governor. He knew that Mr. Christie wrote nice things about him because his team summed it up for him. "I do not have time to read, but I have everything. I have someone, boom, boom, they give me appointments, they are 5 pages, said Trump. You can read that, right? And he was very respectful to me, and then Mr. Trump would be respectful in return. It does not matter what Mr. Kushner may think.